SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Hump Day. How many more of these we got before Christmas? One more?
Just one more.
I think so.
We're 8 days away.
And two more before we plow right into the next year, right? 2026. Man, you know what they say. Where'd the time go? Where'd the year go? And what's really hard to believe is we're, roughly 3 weeks away from those zany legislators joining up in the Capitol. And me and you will be engulfing ourselves just immersed in all of the measures that they will
lose an extra 2 hours of free time every night.
That's right. Well, the question is the Cyclops ready for its appointed duties of delivering those bills up and down the hall there?
Yeah, they got a guy who stopped by with a 13-foot unicycle to try out for the new leader, so there may be some competition.
That would be cool, a unicycle.
It's impressive.
Well, the ceilings
juggling those bowling pins 13 feet in the air while keeping on top of it.
Like I said, the ceilings are high, right? So there's no risk of bumping one's head, but we're getting all braced for it because that's what's going to happen. It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? Here's
I hope nobody's visiting the Magnolia State from a different country, and this is their first experience with the politics in America.
That's true.
So they might just think we're serious.
That's good. So, can I just offer a bit of advice to our good friends in the legislature? Because, of course, you and I will be talking to several of them, and you know as well as I that they tune in regularly to Super Talk, and because they know we cover Mississippi, and we speak to the people through our text line, and we share their thoughts, and we, of course, have a great news team that publishes news from across the Magnolia State, and they especially start, as you know, Rhino, tuning in when that session starts. But here's just a bit of advice. Don't make so many laws about that. Oh, man. There are some things, however, that certainly from this chair and your chair, I think I can say with confidence that we'd like to see happen. One of those is enacting a robust school choice program. Of course, Speaker of the House, Jason White, has indicated now for really some time, I would say. They made a big push during the session, and he continued that and proclaimed, did he not, Rhino, this is my top priority for the 26th session. I'm thinking we may get a bill quickly that is transmitted via either the Cyclops, we don't know at this point, or the unicycle. And you also described the rider of the unicycle, right? Tell us about what you expect that particular dress, the attire, would look like.
Oh, it's a full-blown very nicely done, like almost Disney quality Uncle Sam costume with the red and white stripes and the blue shoulders and the striped pants and the white beard / goatee.
Yeah, so
he lost his top hat while he was doing the tryout. It fell off on the floor. We had to throw it back up to it. But he just juggling the bowling pins, caught it, put it back on his head, and went about his merry way. So
I'm thinking what they need is like a fife, right, to play the Yankee Doodle Dandy or something while they're transporting.
Got to have the Wounded Patriots, the drummer of the fife, and the flag man.
Let's do it. I'm all for it, man. But you know what happens early on? They're pretty busy because there's like 3,000 bills. Of course, there's not a lot of transport between the halls, down the halls between the chambers, because not many of them make it too far, which I would actually say is a good thing. What do we start out with 3,000, a little north of 3,000, end up with 100 or something like that?
It varies year to year, but it's anywhere between 2,500 and 4,000, and you wind up with anywhere from 100 to 200 new laws.
Yeah, that's right. But the school choice is really been promoted by the Speaker of the House as the top priority, and I expect that to be maybe the first bill the Cyclops or the unicycle transports down there to the Senate side of the Capitol. The question is, will our friend Senator Dennis DeBar quickly dispense of it as he has in the past? He chairs, of course, the Senate Education Committee, and he won't come on the program. I've also got to share this, and I thought long and hard about it before I would share it, and that's the Lieutenant Governor. We're having a really hard time getting on the program. Now, he's been on the network. He was on the morning show a couple of days ago, Monday. But I've personally invited him over the last month, and our content director, who does a fantastic job, has also been in touch with the Lieutenant Governor's scheduler. That's fine. That's the way that works. Someone in that position, they need somebody to keep up with their schedule. That's typical, how you would schedule those sorts of folks based on their roles. But I've personally reached out to the Lieutenant Governor to come on, and basically his response was, well, why don't you get with his scheduler? And I said, well, sir, we have, and we can't get anything worked out. We've been working on it 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden I get notified, Rhino, as we do the night before our shows, that he's coming on the morning show. And that's fine. I'm pleased that he came on and that Richard Cross had that opportunity. But am I wrong in getting the feeling that he's avoiding us on this program? Feels like it, doesn't it?
It's easy to see that perspective.
Yeah. And look, I know, I get it. These are busy people that have got to take care of the state's business. I appreciate that and respectful of that. I'm just disappointed that having appealed personally, and I think I've known the Lieutenant Governor longer than anybody in the Capitol, honestly. Going back to my early days in business, 1985, serving as my original and for a very long time corporate lawyer. That's what he did. And did great work. And I have done a lot of business with him as an attorney long before he got into politics. So I just want to put that out there to the audience that we're trying to get him on the program. And sometimes, as you know, Ryan, it's a little different perspective between our show and the morning show. It's just different hosts with sort of different lines of questioning, and we'll maybe cover different subject matter. And that's fine. That's perfect. And so, again, thanks for coming on with Richard and being on the SuperTalk Network, which is the best way, in my view, to address a whole lot of people across the state. In fact, from an on-air perspective, Rhino, it's the only way to do that, right? On a live on-air perspective. And that's the value of this network. That's its chief asset. is that it does reach all corners of the state. And obviously, if you're a statewide elected official, that's important because you are that statewide elected official for the entire state, obviously. So, extending an invitation again here on the air. I'm not going to bug him between now and Christmas, but we'll be on it again, and hopefully we'll get him on because we want to get his take. And Richard did a great job, of course, as he always does. I just would like that opportunity to bring him on to this audience on the Midday Show to go through that. Just want to share that with the folks and make sure they understood that. Now, as far as Senator DeBar, Rhino, what do we even say about that? I mean, we've been working on that for 3 years, 4 years. We can't get the senator on. And, I mean, pay no attention to the fact that he chairs the committee that is related to the largest spending category in the state budget. There is something to be said for that. We're talking about the most money in a category spent in the general fund of the state of Mississippi is education, as it is in all 50 states, because that's a primary function of state government. We could debate whether or not it needs to be, but it is right now. So we're extending that invitation as well. Please come on, Senator Dennis DeBar. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I got a feeling. Oh, please believe me, I'd hate to miss the train. Yes, I do. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio today at 11:05. It's former Congressman Gregg Harper. He'll be in the Element Well studio sharing his thoughts on state and national news and the political landscape. And then Richard Roberson, he's the president and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. He'll be in the Element Well studio at 12:05. We'll get an update, of course, from the Hospital Association. Get his thoughts on the expiration of the ACA subsidies, how it might affect the hospital industry, and then the numerous Medicaid reforms that were enacted into law in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, also known now, I think, as the Working Families Tax Act, I think, is what it's kind of been rebranded as.
I think that's all just silliness.
Seems like
a waste of time on both sides.
Yeah, and it seems like there's way too much focus on that. I agree, and honestly, most of the time, the names, Rhino, they ascribe to these bills have nothing to do with what's in the bill, such as the Inflation Reduction Act. That was the
Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act. Oh, aren't they something? They're so sly, aren't they? So clever. The president is scheduled to address the nation tonight. He's going to deliver a primetime address tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern, and that would be 8 o'clock Central Time here in Mississippi. It's not really understood what he's going to talk about. I got to believe it's going to be an opportunity for the president to address the nation in prime time about the accomplishments during his nearly first complete year in his second term in office, and some outlook for his plans and vision. But also, I think you're going to see him touting the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and its impact on our economy and specifically on individual households and how that's affecting. It's really not clear as to whether or not what's going on with respect to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is resonating with households no doubt you've seen a key metric, I think, by which the economy is measured, just from a consumer perspective, average citizen perspective, is the price of gas. I've always thought that the price of gas is a key factor on Election Day. When you go to the polls to vote for a president, if an incumbent is in there, or even the candidate that is the nominee for the party in power when there's not an incumbent, where the president is termed out or not running for re-election, that the price of gas is a huge factor in deciding their vote. And so we have seen the price of gas fall. It's a good thing. And there are a number of factors. Some of that, of course, is relaxation of regulations that the president implemented upon being elected relative to the prior president, who was hell-bent on killing the fossil fuels industry. So just simply stating that you understand and acknowledge, yeah, we got to have fossil fuels to survive in this country. We cannot abandon fossil fuels. We're not anywhere close, never will, in my view. So it makes sense for us to leverage the abundant resources under our dang feet. And so that has increased production in this country, and I can tell you the exact amount. I researched this yesterday. We were about 13.4 million barrels per day at this time last year, and we're in the 13.7. So a slight uptick, but we've also got Saudi Arabia, who has increased their output to some extent to the chagrin of OPEC. They've kind of gone a little rogue in that respect. You've also got China.
Because they are the big dog in OPEC.
Yeah, it's like, take a hike, OPEC. We don't care. What are you going to do? Because they're critical, essential to the viability of OPEC, let's be honest.
Saudi Arabia is to OPEC as the U.S. is to the NATO alliance, the UN, world economy.
Yeah. So they really just, I mean, they're members of it, but if they don't care to adhere, explicitly. So I did just look it up. Now we're about 13.8 million barrels this month. So my data was a couple of months old. Just looking at that, about 13.8. So we were 13.4 this time last year. And that was a record. This is a record. We are the largest producer of oil in the world, and that's only been the case for a few years, believe it or not. Saudi Arabia, I think, is 6-7 million barrels a day, about half of our output. Now, the price of oil today, interestingly enough, is up. We've been tracking that. We share that with you on a daily basis. It's up today about as much as it declined the last couple of days, and that's because of the blockade the Trump administration has implemented down there in Venezuela on the shipment of oil. And as it's up 94 cents now, so it's off of its highs of the session. And that's because Venezuela, the oil it produces, as we've explained countless times, is all part of the global oil supply. So the best thing a president and our government can do for the goal of driving the price of energy down is get the government the hell out of the way. Reasonable regulations to protect our environment and the other protections that are needed around the industry. Reasonable.
Therein lies the rub.
What's that?
Because liberals, leftists, and Democrats are the most unreasonable people on God's green earth.
Agree. And the problem there is, as you know, they inject ideology into regulation, and there's no place for it. It should be about economics, practicality.
Everything in their sad lives is soaked in ideology.
I agree. And you cannot dismiss the fact and overlook the fact, unsee or hear the fact that you and I played it on the show when Joe Biden was running, and he was questioned. Remember the individual in the wheelchair that had the electronic speaking device Remember that? I think he would write, if I'm not mistaken, and it would speak for him. Wonderful technology. And Biden, in an attempt to appease and placate and appeal to this one individual, you remember he kept questioning, well, are you going to get rid of fossil fuels? And finally Biden understood the question. It didn't seem like he did. I think he was hesitant, honestly, to answer it directly. And because, as is the case with so many politicians, let me answer this in a way that appeases the present audience. But it was caught on video. Yes, we're going to kill the fossil fuels. I'm not exaggerating that, am I, Rhino? Isn't that what he said? Yes, we're going to do away with them. We're going to have something to do with hand gestures and all that. Well, that was idiotic. Totally. So just that, here's the thing that I think gets missed a lot in politics is, guys, businesses latch on to your words and your rhetoric and your messages. Sometimes that's as important and as big a factor in decision-making in business as the policy. If you're just saying, yeah, we're going to kill the fossil fuels industry, and that comes from the president, well, how in the world do you think the oil and gas companies are going to react? Who we need to go create and explore and produce more to drive the price down? Well, they're going to say, wait a second, I don't know if we want to invest the money in there, guys, because, it's like got a several-year payback when we make these capital investments. And here we got the highest elected official in the country saying they want to kill our industry. So all Mr. Trump did is comes in and says, yeah, that's crazy. We're not going to kill the industry. In fact, we're going to open up some of the leases, let you explore, let you develop. But the bigger thing is, even where there were no new leases required, is just that message. We're not out to kill the industry. Okay, well, we got a reprieve here. Let's go make some investments. And then the next thing you know, the production increases and the price goes down. It's just simple as that. I know, second-order thinking. But that's why we're enjoying some reduced prices at the pump, which is a good thing. And that should, by the way, affect the price of goods and services because energy is a component in everything we consume. And I think that's what you're going to hear Mr. Trump talk about, the president talk about.
And most of the outlooks I've seen show that there's going to be, in their words, a surplus next year of oil, which means there's going to be more on the market than there is demand, which means the price should
go
stay
down.
low.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Actually, not good news for the oil and gas companies. Robert Reich ought to like that. They're not going to make as much money coming right back with the Allman Brothers bumping us out of this segment.
From the Seabrook.com.
Hey, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Quintessential 80s music by the Flock of Seagulls. The hair in particular, really a strong reflection symbol of the coiffs of the 80s, right? Awesome tune. Appreciate that. So while we were on the break there, billionaire Ray Dalio, he just announced that he's in on the Trump accounts. The Secretary of Treasury, Bessent, he just announced this. This is good news in my view. Billionaire hedge fund manager Ray Dalio and his wife Barbara have committed to see these accounts. He has joined what we are calling the 50-state challenge, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a press conference on Wednesday. We are inviting every philanthropist in every state across the country to partner with us in building generational wealth for America's children. I love this. This is brilliant. It's brilliant from the perspective that this is the way to address problems in our society without government. Government put the framework in place. I'm not a big fan of government putting $1,000 in, but I will say this. By putting the $1,000 in and creating the program in the accounts, that's for any newborn born between, let's see, I think it's 2025, or it's 2026. Let me make sure I got it. Yeah, babies born in 2025 through 2028. So 4 years. The Big Beautiful Bill Act has a provision where a one-time $1,000 amount will be deposited in an account earmarked for that newborn baby, cannot be touched till they're 18, and then once they hit 18, can only be used for certain purposes: education, buying a house. There's a couple of other things I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, it can be used for other purposes, but it'll be taxed as income.
That's right. Pardon me. You're right. If you want to keep it as tax-free, it's retain its tax-free status and character, you have to use it for those purposes. That's correct. So it's an incentive. Okay, here's the money. It's now available to you once you pass through the age of 18, but you want to invest it over here where we'd like for you to invest it on your education, buying a house, for example. Great. But if you want to use it for other purposes, you're going to have to hit the hip and pay taxes on it. And so I think it's brilliant. But the best part is it was designed to allow, once it's seeded with the $1,000, up to $5,000 a year of additional contributions from anyone, family, friends, but $2,500 of that $5,000 can come from an employer. I think it's brilliant. And I think we need more such programs. I've proposed similar programs for health insurance. Let's get the point is, the concept is, let's engage the private sector.
It goes back to something I talked about, months ago, maybe even a year or two ago now at this point. We were talking about taxes and talking about how Democrats only have a one-track mind: tax the wealthy, take from the wealthy, redistribute.
Yep.
And I was talking about how that's not a good driving force for innovation and excellence, and you're not going to wind up with any noblesse oblige. Well, this is that. You now have magnanimity in billionaires just because you were willing to come to the table and not talk down to them.
100%. Yeah, and you're more likely to feel the charity and the generosity when you don't feel like the government is at war with you, such as we see with Democrats on a daily basis. Bernie Sanders and AOC and Elizabeth Warren, the sort of the household names, Hakeem Jeffries of the Democrat Party, Chuck Schumer, who loads stock buybacks. Oh, my God, stock buybacks. It's like, okay, if we got rid of stock buybacks, economic bliss would break out. That's the way they present it.
Personally, I would still like to see somebody like a Jeff Bezos and an Elon Musk buy a bunch of land out west and start a new national park or something like that, something big and bold.
Yeah.
But this is a heck of a start.
Yeah, I agree. So we've reported that there are numerous companies who have announced that they do intend to participate in this program, and they will award contribute dollars, which can be done on an annual basis, I should say. It's $5,000. I may not have been clear on that. The Trump accounts from the federal government, it's a one-time $1,000 on birth. But subsequent to that, until age 18, up to $5,000 a year, of which $2,500 could come from the employer of the employee who had the baby. I think it's a great idea. I think, by the way, in the state of Mississippi, we have to amend law if we want to have the tax treatment of that also apply. Now, those are post-tax dollars, but I bet we could come up with something. I think we should here in the state of Mississippi, that if I wanted to contribute to those accounts, I get some sort of state income tax, state property tax relief, just like we have with the Children's Promise Act. We got the various eligible charitable organizations. If you contribute to them, you get tax relief up to a certain amount. We ought to do the same thing. I think we also ought to look at this model. I proposed this 10 years ago and sent it to our congressional delegation, but didn't really get any traction. This was when I was in business. It's just, hey, why don't we think about a way to allow the private sector to somehow help with the uninsured in our state, in lieu of Medicaid and ACA subsidies, which are just black holes of waste, fraud, and abuse. Let me as an employer, let me adopt truly needy, legitimately needy individuals, families, households onto my private insurance. And by the way, Blue Cross, you're going to have to let them do that. Help out. You make a handsome living here. You got a profitable company here in Mississippi. Do your part by helping out here. I believe you'd get private companies fall all over themselves to sign up for such a program to help. Now, I don't have all the details worked out to ensure that we vet these people to make sure they're truly in need. Better than we do in the not my problem systems you and I have been talking about the last couple of days. Oh, that's only the 250th time that Social Security number's been used. You got another 250. How does that thing work, man? Just allows you to endless input, interminable input of the same Social Security number, tapping the same benefits for a fictitious Social Security number. We won't do that under the plans that I'm proposing here.
And under your plans, I would propose you have sign-ups at job fairs.
Love it. We should have.
You can come get a job, or if you really need some help, you can get a hand up.
I totally agree. We should have navigators funded by the private sector to help those people. Think about the Employment Security Commission in Mississippi, which is responsible for administering unemployment benefits. We ought to have people there that help them get jobs. That ought to be integrated. I know they do a pretty good job of turning them over to the various resources we have, but I think we could apply a little bit more there. And why can't that too be funded by the private sector? I would much rather contribute to the well-being of the truly needy through this model than sending it to the damn government. The most ineffective,
as much as it pains me to say,
steward of money on the planet.
The reason it'll never happen is the same reason it is a uphill battle borderlining on climbing a cliff to get anything involving the ballot initiative through the Senate.
Good point.
Because you have too many politicians with too big a heads that think it's my job to think for you.
Amen. But I know this is out-of-the-box thinking. You know where I'm going here, that the private sector has got to get more involved, and I think they will. They're just hesitant, reluctant to just send more money to the government. Oh, we'll create programs to address that. And the next thing you know, you got dang Somalians in Minnesota ripping off the taxpayers and sending money back to terrorist organizations. That's why nobody wants to do that. Send more money to the government. Create private sector administered, managed, produced systems and processes and programs that address these issues. We should be doing that right here in the state of Mississippi. But the Trump accounts are just a fantastic, positive, very pointed example of exactly how to do that. Because what happens is guys like Michael Dell and Ray Dalio, and they're all going to feel like, because of the virtue signaling, just as was the case with all the DEI crap in 2020. Oh, wait, Michael Dell, Ray Dalio, they're in? I'm going to have to get in. We're going to pressure Jeff Bezos to hit the hip as well, and Bill Gates, etc. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So Rhino and I were talking during the break. So one little caveat clarification about Michael Dell's $6.5 billion contribution to assist with these Trump accounts is that children 10 years or under, born before the program goes into effect, which is January 1 of this year, who wouldn't qualify for, because they were born before then, the $1,000 initial deposit from the government. He's making, earmarking a portion of that money available to those under 10, which means they were born back in 2014, right? Anytime between 2014 and 2025. He's kind of creating the same sort of program, less money, but for those just simply because they were born before the program takes effect. And it's only available to those who live in zip codes with a household median income of less than $150,000. And Rhino and I were just talking, that would be every zip code in the state of Mississippi, because we have the nation's lowest household median income at about $55,000. The county with the highest median household income is Madison County at about $78,000. Nationwide, the median household income is $85,000. So we lag in those two metrics. So it's $250 for those 10 and under, born obviously before January 1, 2025, in the Dell program. But again, several companies have announced they would match the contributions up to at least up to $1,000, but even more than that, they can go to $2,500 for newborns to employees of their companies. Bank of New York, BlackRock are the two big examples of that, J.P. Morgan. So these big employers, a lot of the big tech companies as well. This is good stuff. So, and we should also point out that those are post-tax. There's no tax. No tax benefit to those companies for doing that. But the income earned in those accounts and just the gain in the value of those accounts is not taxable. So you're born today, a child's born today, the federal government puts $1,000 in, your employer perhaps puts up to $2,500 in, and that just keeps accumulating through the years. Family and employers contribute money and others. Well, as long as it's just like a 401k plan, as long as you're not touching it, no tax consequences. In fact, you don't even have access to it. At least in a 401k plan, you can borrow from it, but there are tax consequences. In these accounts, you don't have access to the money till you're 18. At that point, you don't pay taxes on the gains. You pay taxes on the withdrawals because it's all done pre-tax. So is the way the program is structured. I think it's great. Again, I think it's especially great because this is a partnership between the public and private sector. And we should address more of our problems in the country and in the state through that model. Just engaging the private sector, they're a lot more inclined to help out when they know that it's going for an express purpose and that government doesn't get its grubby hands on it. Because like we've said so many times, where there is big government money, there's big waste, fraud, and abuse. They seem to go hand in hand. There's a corollary, I guess, that you could devise that is sort of takes on that concept. There was also a question on the C Spire text line, landfill management. That's 601-879-4395. Why can't we refine our oil here instead of sending it overseas to be refined? Great question. Something I typically try to include in my speaking engagements. And I got curious about that as well about 5 years ago. Like, why is that? Why do we have these ships, these barges full of oil crossing in the sea, in the oceans? We're sending oil that way to be refined. They're sending it this way. And it's a chemistry issue, literally. There's the light sweet crude, and there's the sort of dirty, more salt, I think, included in the actual oil as it is extracted from the ground. That's considered dirtier oil. And it turns out that our refineries are mostly built around refining the dirty oil, but a lot of what we're fracking and getting out of the ground from that process is not refinable in this country, and we ship it abroad where there are more refineries that can do that, and they ship their dirty oil, such as Venezuela. Remember Biden and the president as well talking about more oil coming from Venezuela. It's the dirty form, the XL pipeline from Canada. They got shut down when Biden became president. That's dirty oil, but that's refinable in the country, and especially around the Texas, Houston, Texas area, the port, where most of the refineries are situated. I call it dirty because that's what the industry calls it. It's not. I don't think it's physically dirty. I think it does pollute more, right, if it happens to leak out more than the light sweet. But it's a chemistry issue. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio after the news with Gregg Harper.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 2 of Middays live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
We're pleased to welcome now former Congressman Gregg Harper. He represented the Congressional District 3, of course, in Washington for us. And he's in the studio to share his extensive insights about the political landscape in our state and our country. Congressman Harper, thanks for coming in, sir.
Man, always great to be with you, Gerard. Merry Christmas. I can't believe the year's almost done.
I know.
I mean, it's pretty crazy, isn't it?
We were just talking about that.
You blink and here we are, I mean, Christmas Eve, a week from tonight.
Hard to believe.
So I hope you've gotten all your shopping done.
Almost.
There
How
you
about
go.
you?
Well, I only have to buy one gift.
Okay.
So if I cover it for Sydney, miraculously everything else seems to get taken care of. So
Gotcha.
I got that early. So I got that shopping part done.
Sounds like you got some elves that help you out.
Obviously lots.
I do too.
It's a big help. Couldn't do it otherwise. But man, just so much going on. And hey, look, football. I mean, what a great year for Mississippi football, really.
Sure.
I mean, you've got Southern and State both in bowl games, and you got Ole Miss playing in the college football playoff game. So it's fun stuff to watch to see how that all goes. And of course, who would have thought Lane Kiffin would have dominated the news forever?
It exhausted us, honestly.
Or as I like to say, Karen Kiffin. But that's another story we'll leave for another day. But that's going to be fun to watch, and proud of all three schools, and in Mississippi. We love the outdoors. We love, football, and Mississippi's really got so much talent. The JUCO level, and of course our university. So it's fun to watch. I'm looking forward to watching a little football.
It is unbelievable. We had the pleasure of interviewing Oxford Mayor Robin Tannehill, whom you know well, last week, and she pointed out something I really hadn't thought about: the first December football game at Ole Miss ever.
Never even thought about that. Yeah.
And she pointed out, typically the students all go home for the holidays, and so. Unusually, it's sort of bucking the trends across the rest of the state. Their sales tax collections decline in December because the buyers are gone, right? The consumers are gone. The excess consumers over and above those who, of course, reside in the great city of Oxford. But this is a little different because we're bringing all these people in the month of December.
Yeah, economically, it may be the biggest football weekend ever in Ole Miss history.
Yeah.
Because, look at And, if you're in a playoff, the hotels seem to be able to charge a little bit
get
more.
On up there.
And maybe a 3-night minimum and, all the restaurants. And
demand and supply dynamic.
It'll be fun to see what all happens and the exposure for the city and the university and the state of Mississippi.
100%.
It's going to be great. Looking forward to seeing some of it. And, of course, Robin Tannehill is such a great mayor, does a super job up there, and man, it's fun to watch all the excitement. And if you like bookstores, Oxford's kind of the place to go, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's always had that reputation of being the home for lots of bookstores, and I think to some extent maybe influenced by the great William Faulkner, who made his home up there. So I think that's kind of carried over through the years, but looking forward to that. So the first thing I want to ask you about, you having, of course, been a member of the United States House of Representatives, we got lots of reps that have announced they're retiring, and senators as well.
That's right.
Seems like an outsized number, Congressman, for this cycle.
I think my class, we came in, elected in 2008, came in 2009, 111th Congress. Gerard, I think we were over 70 new members there. So here's the deal. This is December the 17th.
Right.
And when we announced we weren't going to run again, it was early January.
Right.
So we're not done yet. I think right now we're looking at about 54 total members of Congress, House or Senate, Republicans and Democrats. But if you look at a lot of those, we're talking a number of senators that are leaving.
Right.
But you look at some of them like our own, Senator Blackburn.
Right.
From Laurel, Mississippi, Marsha Blackman
from Tennessee, represents Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean she's legendary. Looks like she's going to probably be the next governor in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then you got Coach Tommy Tuberville in Alabama. So you're losing people like that. And then you've got a couple of House members that are running against each other over in Georgia for the U.S. Senate. So those are vacant seats.
Yeah.
But not. And then, look, Nancy Mace
in South Carolina.
And Ralph Norman.
Elise Stefanik in New York.
Who's, she's really has been a rising star. She's sharp. It's New York. I mean, it's hard to imagine that we're going to elect a Republican governor. But Lee Zeldin did a really admirable job last time around.
Yeah.
And I think Elise will do a really stellar job. I just, that would be a really, really a tough, heavy lift. Yeah. But she'd be phenomenal in that role.
But Blakeney, right? Just announced that Bruce Blakeney, I believe, announced that he's entering the race in New York, and the president hesitates to endorse. He says they're both great. He won't endorse one over another.
Let's face it. Trump's endorsement matters a lot.
It does.
And it's meant a lot in the past, means a lot now.
Absolutely.
The governor of Florida, DeSantis, would never have been elected governor without Trump's endorsement. Adam Putnam was the statewide elected official who was it was his. And then the minute Trump endorsed DeSantis, which raises a whole lot of other issues, Gerard, because DeSantis came out to run against Trump this last. And are you kidding? I mean, so I would say him. The loyalty factor, Trump would probably make sure if he was able that DeSantis would never be president. I just think he's not going to get over that.
As you recall, the president very rapidly called out when the governor entered the race. He wouldn't have been elected governor without my endorsement.
I know. I mean, I think I would have, being a fairly young governor and person, I think, let me stick with the president as long as I can, and then, but his crowd, the Republicans aren't going to forgive him probably for doing that. So I think it's going to hurt him in the long run.
So we got lots of them retiring. You said 54, 55?
I think in that range.
I counted 51, but it's over 50, which is a lot. And we should point out more Republicans than Democrats that are exiting.
That's right. And so it's but again, a lot of those are pulling out, running against each other for other races. But I would say that the Republican seats that will be vacated are all what I would consider safe seats. I don't really think that you'll see flipping those. But that's what everybody's trying to look. November of next year is a political eternity away. Yeah. And we can see the attacks going on Trump right now. I mean, look, you got to hand it to President Trump. Nobody's ever been attacked like that man has for the last 10 years. Yeah. And he's still standing. After probably the first thing, I'd have been over in the corner sucking my thumb. He's remarkable what he's been able to do, and it's hard to believe right now. He hadn't even served a year in his second term. Right. But they are, they're coming after him with full force. We know what their issues are right now. It's affordability in health care. That's what they're polling to say that's where things are, and so. I mean, the one big beautiful bill has so many great things and components in it, and the Democrats historically do a lot better job of messaging than the Republicans. I think we've talked about it before. How Republicans, we can look at numbers, do pie charts and graphs, and then the Democrats talk about poor Aunt Edna. Yeah, and so
everything's emotional.
It
really
is
designed to tug at the heartstrings.
Yeah, and
they're good at it.
It's definitely they are, and so I think Trump's got to not dismiss the affordability. We can talk about the economy's A+++ or whatever, but I mean people are still struggling, and you got to recognize that. And how do we help folks see that, hey, tax-wise, you're so much better off. I mean,
he's going to be on the television tonight talking about it.
8 o'clock tonight, I think is what you said.
We did, and I suspect that's what he'll focus on is start to clarify, because a lot of these things are in the future. Yeah. And I think that's what he wants to promote is just hang in there, this is all coming. So.
Well, you got to give some good news, and I think you will. And we're going to have a look. It's going to be fun to watch, and I'm one who believes Republicans will pull it out and keep the House next time.
Let's talk about that. We got a break right here. We've got former Congressman Gregg Harper in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back.
Be sure to tune in every...
Interrupt this program. Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
In the Element Well studio, we're visiting with Congressman Gregg Harper here, former Congressman. So, just talking about the political landscape. So, all right, so we've covered the midterms are coming up. It's always an uphill battle, though, Congressman, for the party who is the one that doesn't hold the White House. Usually, they prevail, and I think that's really rooted in our system where Americans like balance. They don't want any one party, regardless, to get in more control, have more control. Well, they've been around. Okay, we're going to have to bring them back a little bit, and let's just make sure we've got sufficient balance in place, which is the vision of our founders, which is why they want to do this every 2 years. If that crazy House gets too radical, right? I mean, that was the idea. Yeah. There's a bunch of them in there, and they can get a little radical. We're going to have to rein them in and bring them back kind of to the middle. And of course, the Senate was designed to sort of temper and address the radical stuff that would come over. The cooling saucer, as President George Washington called it, which I think was very appropriate. So that's where we are. It's already an uphill battle. The question is, will Americans feel good enough at the polls a year from now to say, I want to keep those guys in?
Sure. or be afraid of what's going to happen if
That's
they don't
absolutely
keep them
true.
in. It may not be that they want to. Sometimes you vote against somebody or something as opposed to for somebody, so you don't know how that'll play out during the next year. But again, November is forever away, but you can already see that some of the stuff's being baked, as you talked about. Yeah. And we've got a lot of work to do. But I know historically, everybody would say historically almost certain you're going to lose the House. Well, one thing we have to think about is the danger of losing the House.
100%.
Trump's got the ability with the House and Senate to do some really special things, certainly for the next year and a month, and do those things well. But if we lose that control, then all he will do for the last 2 years of his presidency is address inquiries from Congress and hearings and all the stuff there.
They tried to impeach him earlier this week.
Oh, my gosh, And then we find out about the raid down at his home.
Yeah.
That the FBI said don't do it, and the DOJ overrode that. And look, if they can do that to them, they could crush an ordinary citizen,
no doubt,
if they wanted to.
That they've just deemed as an enemy of their ideology politically, not because they have broken any laws, which is exactly what happened here. So that's the ultimate example of politicization and weaponization of assets and resources under the purview of the federal government. And we can't allow that.
And look, they couldn't find the the guy that planted the pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. the day before the January 6th. Yep. I mean, that's incredible. I wonder if we'll ever find out who dropped the cocaine in the White House during the Biden presidency. That would look. I think you and I could have solved that with just looking at some records and interviewing about 10 people and probably come up with who that probably was.
Absolutely.
And they just look past it, but it's critical that the Republicans keep the House, and there really aren't many swing districts, let's say, in the country.
That's right.
The problem for Mike Johnson has been he's had such a narrow margin that anybody could almost shut the whole thing down, and we've seen that on multiple occasions. And look, we've got. There are members that want to be famous and want to raise money online. They're not the ones that are trying to make the trains run on time. And so we've got some incredible members there that are doing amazing work. And when I was there week before last, a lot of people don't know that after the first votes of the week, usually let's say Monday night at 6:30. About 20 members will leave the House, walk behind the House floor to room 219, and they will pray for the next 20 minutes until the next vote gets called, and they'll pray for constituents. And if there's a constituent that some member says, hey, we need to pray for, they'll sign a prayer. All the members will sign the back of a prayer card and mail those. And then, I attended the Bible study that I attended when I was a member. You had the Carols in the Capitol. Steve Amerson, if you don't know Steve Amerson, you've heard him. He's the guy that sang the national anthem at Charlie Kirk's memorial. Encourage listeners, if you haven't seen that, go back and watch that. Well, he led that in Carols in the Capitol. He does that every year. He had a choir from Liberty University, a brass orchestra, and you're hearing that in the United States Capitol. And then there's a bipartisan prayer breakfast the next morning. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on that people just aren't aware of because they don't talk about it. Well, it's kind of a private matter, but it is something that you see that there are many things there that show that I think Christ has a presence in the United States Capitol.
So you've obviously been involved in numerous controversial matters measures and decisions that have to be made in the halls of Congress there. This thing with the enhanced subsidies and the Affordable Care Act is really kind of dominating all the discussion in Washington right now. Those things expire, the enhanced subsidies expire, and in just a short couple of weeks, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says they finally have a bill, having observed that two bills, one from the Democrats, one from the Republicans, in the U.S. Senate failed last week. So now it's Speaker Johnson and the House Republicans' turn to get something done. He's scheduling a vote today, and there's some minor reforms that are in there that they think might get the deal done. But I don't know that they're going to get 60 votes in the Senate.
Well, once again, we talk about messaging. Republicans have not properly messaged that, hey, we're not ending Obamacare.
Yeah.
This is the COVID enhanced benefits that were there. They
supposed to be temporary.
They weren't. Yeah, right. They were designed to be just temporary until we got through it. Well, we're through it, and you never want a good government program to come to an end, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're up against. But we really haven't told that story well. At the same time, there are political ramifications if you leave people hanging. But there's also a system that's set up for a lot of fraud too. So we've got to have some better guardrails on it in the future. We want to help people, but you also expect if people are being helped that they're maybe contributing something to the public good as well.
Sure.
So there's a lot of work that can be done. Can they come up with a bill that'll pass the House and the Senate?
Doesn't look good.
Do the Democrats really want to get something passed?
I think they want to stand for a political perspective and for political expediency. And I think they want to just be the obstructionist here and say, nope, nothing short of continuing the enhanced subsidies will work for us, at least on a temporary basis.
Sometimes it's better just to keep the issue alive politically than it is to solve it.
Sure.
And this is an issue you could solve even if you do a temporary extension and review it a little further, push it out a little bit. Probably an easy, not a difficult thing to do, even though a lot of Republicans will have to hold their nose to say we're extending something we've been trying to end since it passed in 2010.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing to do, but I do think politically there are a lot of times they want to keep the issue alive more than you want to solve the issue, and that's unfortunate.
It's hard to even identify anything else they're working on at this point. That seems to be I'm sure there's small measures that don't get a lot of attention and fanfare, but as far as anything sweeping, this is it.
Well, there's some really great bills that are out there dealing with permitting, speeding up that process. Okay. I mean, that's not something maybe the regular citizens thinking about, but it matters when it comes to energy or building or how we deal with wetlands and things. You want to protect the environment, but at the same time, you don't want to have to wait, 5 years to get a permit.
Right.
And so we're also fortunate, the new Undersecretary of the Army, Adam Tell, from Mississippi, over the Corps of Engineers, and he's an amazing man. So excited about having him and a Mississippi person in that very important role.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wasn't aware of that he was from Mississippi.
Yeah, he went to Mississippi State. Well, I think he grew up in Alabama, but he went to Mississippi State, so we fully claim him.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, certainly work to do there. Anything else you think the president may talk about tonight? I think he's going to be focused on that for the most part.
I really think, and of course we love President Trump. I think though he needs to have a very scripted message tonight.
Yeah. And
give people some hope and show, hey, here's what we're working on to make your life better.
Okay.
That he recognizes, and of course J.D. Vance. I mean, look, his background's completely different. He understands that people have real problems, and so if Trump can empathize towards that and come up with some ideas that people can say, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, that's returning money.
I hope so.
And give people a little boost there.
Yeah.
Anything like that, I think, will go across well.
Well, I hope so, because it is critical, as you pointed out, that Republicans retain control of the House and Senate with the midterms coming up so that the agenda can continue, because otherwise it gets put on ice for 2 years, essentially.
That's right.
Then there's kind of limited to executive order, and that's really not the best way to me. And you can't get a lot of stuff done.
It's too temporary, and you can't count on it.
100%. Congressman Gregg Harper has been our guest in the Element Wealth Studio. Always good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
You too. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and your
Thank
family.
You.
Yep. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth Studio.
From the Seabrook film, he keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We appreciate former Congressman Gregg Harper sharing his insights on the political landscape in Mississippi and across the country as well. So, wanted to pass this on. My bandmate, Representative Steve Lott, from down there in George County, Lucedale and so forth, he sent me a text while, Rhino, we were talking about the refining of oil and this mismatch between the chemistry of the oil we extract from the ground and the construction of and the processing of the refineries themselves, and how certain refineries are built around the so-called dirty oil and certain are built around the light sweet. And so Steve, by the way, our lead guitarist, and a fine one he is retired from a successful career in the oil and gas industry. And he says that dirtier mainly means more impurities, sulfur, nitrogen primarily, that have to be hydroprocessed more intensely. Sweeter state in a heavier, dirtier processing facility causes plant utilization to drop, which is inefficient for heat and energy recovery. Hydroprocessing and cracking heavier slates, I think is what I see here, in a facility gives a better yield per barrel of high-value product. We haven't, as we've talked about on the show, we haven't had a new refinery built in many years because of regulations and risk of that big of a capital commitment when policy may change. 100%. We've played clips of like the Exxon CEO saying, we will never build another refinery in this country. You know, it's a multi-billion-dollar investment. It's a 15, 20-year payback, and we can't get any clarity and assurance from the government that we're not going to just regulate it out of business like Joe Biden actually talked about. So who in their right mind would commit so much capital to a project, to the construction of a refinery, knowing some crackpot gets in there and in any given cycle and just regulates it out of business? So little explanation. Appreciate my friend Representative Steve Lott for providing that to us. Hope that helps. But it's the two main, light sweet versus the heavier, more impure form of oil, and the processing of that at the refinery level is completely different. And so you want to process the particular grade of oil in the facility that's purpose-built like that. It just turns out we got more in this country that are built around the dirtier form of oil than we do the light sweet, but we're getting more of the light sweet out of the ground through the whole fracking revolution, and thus the barges are literally passing in the ocean. Seems inefficient, crazy, but it's actually, I've read reports, Rhino, that say it's more cost-effective to ship it overseas and refine it, and then return it back as usable finished fuel than it is to try to process it here. So that makes sense. So send it to, and I think Steve points it out, it's just a lot less efficient and you get lower yield. So when you figure that all into the cost and the math, it makes more sense just to pay the additional transportation cost to send it to the refinery that can maximize the output of the raw product coming in. That's where we are. But again, it's a global commodity. I think that's the thing that certainly Joe Biden never understood. Just go out there to the pump, dial down those prices. This is insane to make such asinine recommendations and proposals. And in his case, he was like demanding it, imploring it. No, dude, it's your bad policies. When you tell the world we're getting rid of something, but then you get mad because the price goes up because Americans are unhappy about it, this is your response. Just go out there and lower the price. That's crazy. Man, oh man. So, it's a good explanation. Really appreciate that. Let's see what else we got on the C-Spire text line. I was talking earlier when we cranked up the program in the first segment about the lieutenant governor. We reached out to him. We're trying to get him on, and hopefully we'll make that happen. not successful thus far, getting him scheduled. Tell the lieutenant governor to pay off all Mississippi debt and fully fund PERS. So we are paying off the debt, and he promotes that every time he gets on. By the way, I should point out that Mississippi, among the states, is among the least indebted of all the states. So it's not like we have just an outsized amount of debt. We are paying it off. It's relatively financed at a relatively low interest rate. We have about $14 billion of total state liabilities. Our GDP, by the way, is $158 billion, so we're below 10% of GDP. Just for comparative purposes, you heard the Center for Scott Towner, right, the policy director at the Center for a Responsible Federal Budget, on the program with us yesterday when he pointed out, as we have, that our debt now exceeds our federal GDP. And that's the metric that the investment community, markets, businesses, decision makers, banks, this is what they look at, is that ratio. Okay, you got a lot of debt, but what's your GDP? How much revenue are you producing? And think about your household. The debt is manageable when you got sufficient income to cover it. So the debt service, as it's called. The same thing in the state. So the good news is our debt is less than 10% of our GDP. The federal government, on the other hand, is more than 100% of GDP. Our GDP is about $30 trillion a year. Our debt is 38 and soon will be 39, and by this time next year it will click across 40. Here in the state of Mississippi, our debt is about $14 billion. Our GDP, $158 billion. So completely different picture from the federal to the state. Now, I haven't looked it up lately, but the debt per capita in our country is astronomical. Like $126,000 if you want to look at that. In the state of Mississippi, it's $4,700. Now, I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's manageable. We're not having a problem. We're not having to go in debt every single day to pay our bills like the federal government is, which is good news. So we continue to chip away at that. We don't borrow any new money, so we're steadily reducing our outstanding debt load here in the state of Mississippi. However, the elephant in the room, as I called it in the article I wrote a couple of years ago, is PERS, the Public Employees Retirement System, which our listener here from the 228 points out, fully fund PERS. Yeah, and so the question is how exactly? Because the actuaries are telling our legislature, our PERS board, you need about $200 million a year for several years to square away and stabilize the PERS fund. Well, that's going to come from the taxpayers. It's where it's got to come from. There's really no other source. Now, sure, we can talk about perhaps earmarking proceeds from mobile sports betting. That's been suggested as an idea. Not likely to generate the sufficient number of $200 million a year. In fact, when Representative Casey Urey presented that, I was there in the gallery a couple of years ago in the 24 session. He projected about $20 million a year, so 10% of what we need for PERS. There have been other ideas suggested as well, such as earmarking lottery proceeds. $120 million a year, roughly, is what the lottery produces. The first $80 million goes to roads and bridges. The excess over that goes to the Education Enhancement Fund. So we could certainly pull some or all of that away and dedicate it to the PERS function, but then that just leaves a hole in the State Highway Fund and education. So it's a shell game. You're not really producing any new revenue. Mobile sports betting would produce new revenue, and it's voluntary. That's what I like. It's just like the lottery. You don't like it, don't play it. Not like taxes. You don't like it, don't pay it, go to jail, right? That's what happens. So I think we got some work to do that, but we still hope that the Lieutenant Governor will come on and talk to us about the numerous issues. Let's see what else we got. Kevin from Tupelo, I refuse to believe median income is $55K. Too many $300K houses sold on a regular basis. It's what it is, Kevin, and I think you really have to consider the entire state. I'm sure that you're seeing that, but heck, Rhino, there are counties in the state that don't have $300,000 houses, I'd venture to say. So you got to look at it holistically. There's some areas are just better than others, but the 55K median. Now, let me point out, Kevin, just to make sure you understand, median household income means median as a statistical term means half below that, half above it. Thus, it's right in the middle. Mean is the average, and which is actually lower in the state of Mississippi because that's an average of all people in the state, the entire population. Take all the income generated, divide that by the whole population, boom, that's the mean income. Then you got median, that's the halfway point, the midway point. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. Some stranger to you and me.
The great Phil Collins. He's still pretty ill, isn't he? But hanging in there with us. What a talent. Incredible. All right, so share with the folks what you were telling me. We were talking about the debt in the state of Mississippi. A great question from someone on our text line. Appreciate that. But I looked at $4,700 roughly per capita. In other words, every person in the state, their share of the total outstanding state debt, $4,784. Is that what you see? Something similar to that?
Yeah, $4,781. Okay. That ranks us at number 27.
Right in the middle, 50. Then. Okay. So there's some that have considerably higher per capita debt.
Compared to our neighbors, like Louisiana, they're at $82.83 per capita. They're doing a little worse, but then you have others like our neighbors, Arkansas, that are at just shy of $4,000. Alabama's just shy of $3,500. Yeah, and Tennessee's less than $2,000.
Wow! So we've done well in this category. Did you look up the federal? I mean, it's astronomical. What is it? Isn't it like $126,000 or something crazy like that?
I didn't get to there, but I was surprised that Connecticut is number one ahead of somewhere like New Jersey or Hawaii, but Connecticut is number one at $26,000.
Gee whiz.
Whereas New Jersey's just shy of $23,000 and Hawaii's just shy of $19,000.
Wow. Yeah, federal, $114,000. It's the figure I was thinking about, which is much higher than what I thought it was, is debt per household. That's $284,000 per household. So per person, $113,000. That's as of December of this year. That's with our debt totaling around $38.4 trillion, having increased by $1.8 trillion for fiscal year 25, on track to repeat that and then continue to rise. Now, the hope is that the various policies enacted by the president will boost our GDP materially, and that will, of course, also increase revenues to the Treasury, and that will hopefully sort of moderate our deficit because the spending continues, especially in the mandatory spending categories of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, debt interest, etc., without any action on the part of the Congress. It just continues to follow the statute that created and amended those programs through the decades. No end in sight for that. So Let's see. Thomas in Greenwood says $18 trillion in tariff revenue will pay the debt off by next year. And I asked him, $18 trillion? He said that's what we've taken in. I've heard him say trillions. I haven't heard $18 trillion. It's about $300 billion a year. In Joe Biden's last term, it was about $150 billion. That's because he actually maintained the tariffs the president implemented in his first term on China. Surprisingly, the Biden administration did not reverse those. They kept them in place. And so $150 billion a year was generated. $300 billion now a year in tariff revenue. It's certainly not sufficient to do anything to our deficit and debt of any material value. It was baked in this past year for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2025. We had a $1.8 trillion deficit. We borrowed $439 billion for the first 2 months of the fiscal year 2026. That was October and November. We're on a run rate to generate another $1.8 to $2 trillion deficit this particular year. And CBO and Center Committee, for a Responsible Federal Budget, they estimate over the next 10 years we will generate and add $26 trillion to our current level of debt. Interesting. Let's see. That Reed says that $4,700 would pay my child's private school tuition that I've paid to the 10th grade. I think I've paid my share. And he's talking about the debt per capita in the state of Mississippi. Yeah, I hear you. That's just the amount you owe. But your taxes aren't going up. In fact, your taxes are going down. So consider that even though the state historically borrowed this money as needed. And honestly, guys, when you are investing in long-term assets, capital assets, as opposed to operating expenses, it's not a bad idea to borrow money for that, to correspond with the life of the asset. You can pay cash for it and avoid the interest, but you could also put that cash to work and generate interest revenue. You got to consider all that in these decisions. This is what businesses do every day, all day, especially the larger enterprises. Coming right back with Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association after the news. Super Talk and Fox News coming your way.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, live from the Element Wealth Studio on this Hump Day. We're pleased to welcome now Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. All right, Richard, healthcare dominating the discussion up there in Washington, D.C., and of course, your organization represents providers of healthcare, hospitals specifically. How in the world do they plan? I just got to ask you, as a former business person, you know, when you plan, you need a little what I call faith, confidence, and certainty of what the future landscape is going to look like from a tax regulatory perspective, financial, economic perspective, best you can to feed into your as an input to your plans. How in the world do these guys do it?
Well, look, happy midday, Gerard. Happy midday. You know, I mean, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest challenge right now, particularly for hospitals that are big operations. It's also hard for physicians that may have an independent practice, may be a small clinic.
Sure.
Trying to budget what they can for 6 months, 12 months, God forbid, 3 years out. is really a challenge because the rules for reimbursement, the rules and regulatory structures keep changing. The rules regarding eligibility and coverage keep changing.
Yep.
And so it's really, really hard. So it is hard to predict with any degree of great certainty what your business model is going to look like. And then, folks come in and say, well, we don't really like your business model. And so, so we're going to make you do things a little bit differently, and we want you to change. But what you change to, we may not want to keep around in 3 or 4 years. And
arguably
so they don't know
more
what to
so
pivot
than
to.
any industry. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but right.
And that's a challenge. I think, look, folks in healthcare and in all these different types of businesses are smart people running these groups
sure.
and running these hospitals. As soon as they pivot to something, they need to know that what they're pivoting to is going to last.
Yeah.
And that's the big challenge.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, when you're constantly having to implement something, then pull it back and adjust it and amend it. I mean, some of that's just part of normal business. But
it is.
when it's not the market dictating that, but rather the government and regulations and the regulatory framework, both at the federal and the state level, that you got to deal with, plus the market.
Yeah, and that's right. And look, and when folks are making decisions on recruiting physicians, for example, to come into Jackson, to come into Tupelo, to come into Hattiesburg, or to come into Greenville, Greenwood, smaller rural areas of Mississippi, they're trying to recruit based off of a business model where they're going to offer the physician maybe a 5-year contract, but they may not know with a great degree of certainty what that really looks like from their revenue standpoint and what they can afford to pay. And so it makes recruiting physicians, recruiting nurses, recruiting other healthcare folks really hard. It's just a big challenge in that environment. And then, like I said, when Congress flips every 2 years, when the administration changes every 4 years, when all those different dynamics come into play and we have these wild ebbs and flows that we've had really since the Affordable Care Act, it just makes it a challenge.
Big time. So let's talk about that for a minute, Richard, because the overarching conceptual goal, and I call it conceptual because we've never been able to achieve that goal, with the Affordable Care Act was universal coverage. The driver more than anything was we have at that time in 2009 time frame, 2010, we had 25 million people of the 320 million population that had no insurance. And so because they have no insurance, first, it's a problem for them if they have some sort of catastrophic event and they don't have a way to pay for it, and it plunges them into bankruptcy. But it's also a problem in that those are probably the healthier people in the country that just feel like they can take that risk and not have insurance, and thus the people that do have insurance are the ones that are likely to file more claims. And when we leverage that risk out, that's the whole business model of insurance. It makes it better and it drives the cost down for everybody. I mean, that was the goal. The question is, how do we get there?
Right.
And the Democrats controlled the Congress at that point and the White House, and they passed what they thought was the way to get there.
Yeah, and not to go into the weeds too much on the history of it all.
Yeah.
But a big part of all this was the Affordable Care Act had in large part been passed, and then there was a special election in Massachusetts.
That's right.
Senator Scott Brown, not senator at the time, won. As a Republican in Massachusetts, replacing a long-term Democrat
who dreamed of socialized medicine.
Who dreamed of it, and that was Senator Kennedy. And so, so they had a pivot moment in the Congress.
That's right.
And no longer were there enough votes to pass, or actually no longer were there votes to go back and amend and work on some of the challenges and some of the gaps in care and gaps in the regulatory scheme and gaps in eligibility regarding Medicaid expansion populations. So they didn't have a chance to go back and fix that because the margins were so tight.
Right.
And so then by the time the Congress comes back in, you can't make the changes, so they just passed that thing as is, and it wasn't perfect.
Right.
And they kind of whittled away and made some improvements and made some changes over the years, but foundationally there were some structural defects in that version because of the elections.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly right.
And so, so you go back to that, and, a house built on a not so great foundation is not going to last and not be in a great place for very long. And to some extent, that is a foundational problem. Now, there are a lot of good things that came out of the Affordable Care Act that a lot of people like being able to keep your kids on health insurance till you're 26, not having the pre-existing condition exclusions. Those are all good things. There's some things in there that have been more challenging.
Yeah.
But again, we just can't seem to come to a consensus as a country on what we want to set health care on a level path for, and then let our providers do the work, because most of our providers, what they really want to do at the heart of the matter is take care of their patients.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And really, without having to think about who's paying what, where they're paying, and you know as well as I do, because we have invented so many new procedures. I think I've mentioned this to you before. Yeah. We keep inventing more care. Everybody wants it, but it costs more money. But that's also caused the insurance companies to beef up their medical staffs to get involved in the insurance claims approval process. And then the doctors often have to get involved. It's a doctor-to-doctor conversation, right, to sort out what they think their patient needs, and the insurance company's saying, "No, I'm not sure we want to pay for that." That happens every day.
Yeah, and look, I mean, right now the way the system is working is a lot of our insurance companies are hiring physicians and nurses.
That's what I mean.
In some cases, they've got more clinical staff in an insurance building than they do in a hospital. And and that's do we need that? Does it need to look that hard? Do we need to make it that hard?
Right.
And some of that is this game of we think we know better than you do about what needs to be paid and what needs to be covered, and we've got people out there that do try to game the system, and so we sometimes take a sledgehammer to a gnat and trying to put that out and trying to prevent fraud and abuse. And so there's just all these things going on. And look, I mean, medical advances over the last 10, 15, 20 years are amazing. They're not cheap.
That's right.
We could all go back to sticking leeches on people and bleed everybody out.
Not very expensive.
Not very expensive. They're cheap, and they don't cost much. But I don't think they were very effective.
Right.
That's not what we want to do. So we could go back to the dark ages and just keep things where they were with, elementary X-ray machines. But man, there's some advances in imaging that are phenomenal, and
no
you
doubt.
can get ahead of predicting bad outcomes before a tumor gets too big.
Sure.
And so those are all things that we as consumers want.
Right.
And but
they cost money.
But they cost money.
Yeah.
And those advances are great, and there's a lot of good that has come from that in the treatments and in the medicines and in the imaging and all the diagnostic tools that are available. Beyond that, you've got robots doing surgery now.
Yeah.
And so I mean, all those things are just amazing, and it leads to shorter length of stays in hospitals. You used to go in and just to get your tonsils pulled as a kid, you might spend 2 nights in the hospital.
That's right.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
And now that's done in a morning, and the kid's home within an hour.
Yeah.
And so, so it's big procedures, and it's relatively routine, small procedures too. And just the advances are amazing, and that's what we want to keep being able to do.
Sure. And, when you look at 20 years ago, much of what's available today that is in the catalog, essentially, that an insurance company may pay for, or that a physician, a healthcare professional would use to treat a patient, it didn't even exist back then. So there's a whole lot more to buy with your insurance premiums than there were a short 5 years ago, much less 20.
And the way you bill for these things with the insurance company,
That's true.
You bill now by the bone on your finger, by the bone on your hand, not just by the whole hand. And so there's so many intricacies.
Highly
with billing
specialized.
and coding. That's right.
Stick around. We'll keep talking. Yep, we got Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth Studio.
Carter Jewelry.
From the governor's mansion to your Thanksgiving table, we've got the stories worth discussing. Back to Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. All right, so we were just talking offline. The Speaker of the House is putting the House bill up to a vote today. It is expected to pass. He says he's got the votes. You know, that's what his job is to count those votes, and he's got his whip and so forth. But it just doesn't look like it's going to get the necessary 60 votes to get across the threshold in the U.S. Senate. And the Senate's already failed to pass two bills that came out of the Senate. And it very simply, it restores the cost-sharing reductions, which is something that was repealed under the first Trump term. And all that really means, for the purpose of the audience, I'll take a stab at explaining it. If I get it wrong, I'll ask you to help me out here. I'm sure you'll do a great job. But all it really means is when you buy insurance, you know, depending on the amount of premiums you're willing to pay, typically the higher the premiums, the more extensive is the coverage. But it also means your out-of-pocket costs, the amount you've got to pay over and above what insurance covers. Typically that's lower when premiums, so they work in a kind of an inverse direction. Higher premiums, lower out-of-pocket. Higher out-of-pocket, lower premiums. And so what the cost-sharing reductions do, which were part of the original Affordable Care Act, is for those with an income, I think it was below 250% of the federal poverty level, it would provide additional assistance for the out-of-pocket cost. Yeah. So you get premium tax credits on the premium side and additional federal funding assistance on the out-of-pocket cost. Well, that was actually repealed, I think in 2017 or 18, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that was about that time frame.
And so immediately the insurance company said, okay, well, we're going to lose customers because they don't want to sign up for this coverage if they got to bear the full cost of deductibles, copays, coinsurance. Therefore, we're going to raise the premiums because the federal government's paying that and lower the deductibles and out-of-pocket costs. And so now they're reinstating that, Richard. We're reinstating what we reversed in 2017
and it goes
by
back,
Republicans.
Yeah, and look, it goes back again to what we talked about earlier. Predictability and stability.
Yeah.
And just can we agree on what the policies need to be and leave it alone? Because consumers get confused. We're all over the place with trying to provide insurance. Healthcare providers need to know. And so, you know, this is another example of it shouldn't be a matter of bad policy, good policy. Let's just put out a policy and leave it. And then we'll figure out if it's good or bad. Yeah. There's some bad policies that we can probably all agree on and get rid of them, and that's fine. Yeah. There's some good policies, and you know, a lot of times it's in the eye of the beholder, because what may be a good policy to a provider is a bad policy to the insurance companies, and vice versa. Yeah. But getting everybody in a room and figuring this stuff out can happen. If folks will just start talking to each other.
All right, so the enhanced subsidies which were enacted in the American Rescue Plan and then extended for 3 years, I believe, after that, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which just slides the percentages up that one has to pay of their income for premiums, making their cost of premiums lower. That's all expiring. It looks like it's imminent at this point.
2 more weeks.
Yeah. So the concern, bring it down to Mississippi, is that we have 340,000 or so signed up.
About that,
right? In the marketplace, the ACA, the so-called Obamacare, and Commissioner Cheney, the insurance commissioner, on the program in his team's research, he was on the program a couple of weeks ago. They estimate we may see as many as over 100,000, right?
I've heard the number signed. I've heard Commissioner Cheney say 200,000.
Oh, wow!
So look, I mean, what we saw with the exchange plans was, prior to those subsidies, those tax credits and those enhanced subsidies, we saw just under 100,000 people in Mississippi over about a 6-7 year period that they had existed enroll in those plans. And then once those subsidies kicked in and became part of the equation, enrollment took off. Right. I mean, shot through the roof. We went from just under 100,000 to just over 300,000. And so obviously that was the big wild card. I mean, it doesn't take we don't need to go spend $10 million studying the impact of that to see what happened. And that is what it was. Yeah. And so without those, I think it makes sense to believe that people will now lose their coverage.
They will drop it.
They'll drop it because it's not affordable for them. Yeah. And so if we end up going 200,000 the other way, that's a not only is it bad for patients first, I mean, it's bad for people that may need that, rely upon that, and won't access the system in the way that they need to, which is going to clinics and doctors for primary care first and all those things. What that tends to do is when the number of uninsured goes up, the uncompensated care cost for our hospitals goes up. Because people utilize the emergency department for primary care or just for things that are not necessarily emergencies. And look, emergencies are also in the eye of the beholder. I mean, one person's emergency could be another person's,
100%.
Upper respiratory infection cold. And so there is that. And so, that's incumbent on folks to make those decisions and make the best decisions for themselves without putting themselves in harm's way. We don't want anybody not going to the hospital because they want to wait the next day. If you need it, go. But the problem for the hospitals essentially comes down to under EMTALA, a federal law that was passed back in the 80s, 86. It requires the hospitals to take care of those patients regardless of ability to pay if they come in through the emergency department door. Yeah. And that's just a real challenge when you have something like that. And
whether they can pay it or not, let's be clear.
Whether they can pay it or not.
And regardless of their immigration status.
Look, I need to buy Christmas gifts. But I don't get to walk into Walmart or any other store and just say, I need this in a week and a half. Can I just walk out with a buggy full of stuff?
Unique to this industry.
Unique to this industry. And there's a lot of good things, like we talked about earlier, a lot of these medical professionals who take care of people. It's not all about the money, but no money, no mission. They're not going to be around to pay for staff if they don't have the resources. Our Mississippi hospitals are the lowest cost in the country, have been for a quarter century since I've been seeing these reports from the Kaiser Family Foundation.
Yep.
It's not that the costs are through the roof. Are they high relative to other things? Sure. But in Mississippi, our healthcare costs are extremely low when you compare us to Louisiana, Alabama, certainly California, New York, other big states, Texas. We're inexpensive when it comes to hospital care. They struggle with the revenue side of it.
Sure.
And getting back to the exchange conversation, without folks getting coverage through these insurance companies, that's only going to get worse.
We already have over 300,000 in Mississippi, one of the highest uninsured rates in the country, as you know. You add another 200,000, that puts us at almost more than 20% of our population.
We're heading in the wrong way.
Uninsured.
Yeah, we're heading the wrong way. I mean, so Texas right now, I think, still leads the country with their number of percentages of uninsured.
Right.
Texas also has a pretty good commercial market.
Right.
That helps mitigate that. It doesn't eliminate the cost of uncompensated care, but there are ways to mitigate it. In Mississippi, we've mitigated it the last 2 years through enhanced state-directed payments, our supplemental payment program through Medicaid,
now, right?
Which we're now at risk for losing that, both through a recalculation requirement that CMS is making us do over the next 2 years to recalculate that rate. We do expect that to go down just in and of itself.
Okay.
And then the one big beautiful bill will also require states to start stair-stepping those payments down to something closer to what Medicare pays instead of what a market payment would be, which is that commercial rate. Which
and
is
already the lowest in the country, right? Don't we have the lowest commercial rate reimbursement in the country?
We believe we do. It's hard to pin that, stick that.
I know it is.
Like nailing molasses to a tree sometimes, but it's hard to figure that one out because there's just so much disparate data. And data, frankly, it doesn't get ever reported because there's a lot of confidential, proprietary, contractual information. But yes, so all those things are coming together at really a bad time. Again, our hospitals went through the gauntlet as we all did during COVID. We've finally started to get sea legs under us. The state-directed payment was kicking in. Hospitals were in pretty good shape relative to where they were. And now we have this change. Again, the predictability, the stability. We just need to know what is expected. And we've got some opportunities ahead of us with the Rural Health Transformation Fund.
That's right.
Hopefully those are some good things that will be coming down the pipeline. Remains to be seen. We don't know what the details are yet.
Seems like we qualify. $50 billion appropriated for that. So.
If we ain't rural, I'm not sure who is.
I agree. Quick, before you go, overall, Richard, kind of the financial condition of the hospitals in your group.
There are some hospitals that are still struggling. Revenue is still tight. Uncompensated care costs have continued to go up. in spite of it, because the cost of everything has gone up.
Yeah.
So the cost of taking care of a few people is more than it was a few years ago. So we're guardedly optimistic for some. Others we're very concerned about. We need some help. And we hope we'll get it.
Hang on for the wild ride, right?
That's right.
Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association in the Element Well studio. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners as well. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Coming right back, folks. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook Days with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Get a job.
That's just the way it is.
Verse 3, of course, my favorite. Well, they passed a law in 1964 to give those who ain't got a little more. Oh, man. All hell broke loose since then, didn't it? That's great. He said, but it only goes so far, does the great Bruce Hornsby, the author and vocalist, pianist, keyboardist in that tune. Because the law don't change another's mind when all it sees at the hiring time is the line on the color bar. Oh, no. Mandolin Rain, by the way, Rhino, my favorite tune by Bruce Hornsby and the Range. If you can dig that one up, it's a good tune. It's got, what do you call the little small guitars? Not a ukulele. There's another.
A mandolin?
I guess it's the mandolin itself.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Yeah. So I think 2 of them featured in the tune. Really cool. That's pretty creative, you'd have to agree, for a rock song, a rock genre song, to include the mandolin. So on the C Spire text line, appreciate Richard Roberson, of course. Always good to have him in the Element Well studio discussing all things related to health care and the hospitals, the industry in the state of Mississippi, the folks he represents in the Mississippi Hospital Association. Luke in Oxford says one of its many fatal flaws, the ACA didn't allow private insurers to tier risk pools. This allowed premiums to be more affordable for the sick, but fleeced the young and healthy. Yeah, and that's really described in what's called community rating as opposed to risk pools. That's a little bit different concept. And you're right. What it did is it limited the ratio that an insurer could charge older sick people relative to young healthy people. And before the ACA was passed, the insurers could charge whatever they wanted without any regard for the ratio of premium cost for an older sick person relative to a younger healthy person. And it could even be a younger sick person, just basically looking at the overall health profile of the enrollee, of the subscriber. So the good news is that tempered the premiums for those that otherwise would pay a whole lot more because of their conditions, because of their age. Bad news is they spread that cost among those who are of a lower risk to the insurance company. And that kind of sounds like a good plan on paper, at least to the folks that would bear the higher costs, but it also deterred many young people, of course, from signing up, and that was the purpose of the mandate. You may not want this, there, Americans, but you're going to sign up for it and pay in. That's the only way to make the model work. You got to essentially pay in to cover the cost of the sicker population, of those with a riskier health profile. Now, one of the ideas in the Act originally was what are called risk pools. The risk corridor is actually what the Affordable Care Act called it. And the idea there was, well, let's like rope off, if you will, segment the riskier patients, enrollees, from the non-risky. Let's put them and kind of spread that risk out, put them in a pool where there's not kind of a distorted ratio that causes problems for insurance carriers. And there was actually some money appropriated to that purpose, the risk corridor. And this concept was, believe it or not, an innovation in 2003 from the George W. Bush administration. And it had to do with the outpatient prescription drug benefit in the Medicare program. They were kind of opposed to it from a political, ideological perspective. So through a public insurance program, just like Medicare's Parts A and B, they extended coverage through a government-subsidized private insurance program for Part D. But prescription drug-only private plans didn't exist. Couldn't buy those. So they came up with this Part D, added it on to Medicare. Problem is, they didn't have any money to pay for it. It was crazy. It was fun. It was a situation where government created a new program, a new benefit, without thinking about how we're going to pay for it. They didn't cut costs elsewhere. They didn't raise any revenue. And the government was expected to recover some of its costs, but that didn't work out. But the bottom line is, the risk corridor program was actually a pretty good concept, but its design was flawed and it failed. It was also supposed to be temporary, which wasn't a good idea, but that's because that's what was required to pass the thing through reconciliation, because, as Richard just mentioned, Ted Kennedy passed away and Democrats lost the 60 votes that they had in the Senate. Remember, they got to 60 votes because Americans punished the Republicans for the financial crash of 2008. And we're not only going to vote for a Democrat president, Barack Obama, over John McCain, we're going to give the Democrats control of both houses, super majority control of both houses. And then Ted Kennedy died unexpectedly in 2009, December of 2009. And boy, there were some long faces. I remember it, Rhino. There were some long faces in the Congress when that happened, because they knew that just doomed their dream health care plan. What we got was the diluted, watered-down version, believe it or not, because they had to settle for passing, as you heard Richard say, kind of what was able to make it through the Senate on a reconciliation process with the House. So that's what we got. But, yeah, lots of ideas. We'll see what happens. Andy says, if you want to fix something with health care, make them standardize the billing process. My wife had breast cancer, and it is just totally stupid, the number of different bills coming from 2 different places, anywhere from 1 week to 6 months after they have seen you. It is impossible to keep up with. Amen, Andy. And I can share a little personal story on that, too. I think I've shared it before, Rhino. I went to buy a vehicle. I don't remember what year it was, and was financing it. And this was in the 90s, late 90s. And the finance person at the dealership says, you can't get credit. Why not? Of course, we didn't have all the access to your credit reports like we have today. They said, yeah, you have an outstanding bill, a collection, as they call it, on your credit report for a local anesthesiologist who put my son to sleep for a broken nose he sustained playing baseball. It was $300. But that collection blocked me from getting credit Guys, I have no reason not to pay $300. And so the contact was a collection agency, which is what they typically do. I called them, and, man, they were just rude and nasty to me. Well, you're lucky the doctor put your son to sleep. You didn't pay him. Like, are you kidding me? My 10-year-old son? I got so mad, I drove immediately to the anesthesiologist's office in town and paid them, told them what was going on. They were flabbergasted. They were just shocked at the way this collection agency, and they canceled their contract with that collection agency as a result. I said, look, I have no reason not to pay you, but the point I'm making to Andy, you get so many dang bills, you don't know who to pay. Really. I agree, Andy. It's ridiculous. It is emblematic of just the overall administrative nightmares within the healthcare industry, and it's frustrating. People want to pay their bills. You can't tell who to pay what most of the time. I agree. Needs to be cleaned up. I'm not sure what government can do about that. Maybe that's something that, again, the private sector could put some pressure. They're the customers of the insurance companies. Put some pressure on these guys. The guys, you got to clean up your insurance. And, just when you have group insurance, you go to the doctor, and you get 14 different documents. Sometimes they say, this is what you owe. No, don't pay this yet. We don't know what you owe, right? Oh, we're just telling you this is an explanation of what you might owe. Like, what the hell? You can't figure it out. I agree. It's crazy. Totally agree. Yeah, Bub in Starkville says, I agree. Pain in the neck. Good text there, Andy. Appreciate that. We got the final segment of Middays coming up. I got to share something about my brother on the other side of the break.
Need cash for
covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Outstanding tune there by Bruce Hornsby. If you ever watched the video, Rhino, the drummer has the greatest expressions on his face. I mean, he's just feeling it into it. It's awesome. So, today, December 17th, is my brother's birthday. My brother served his country during the Vietnam era with honor and pride and distinction, a member of the prestigious Strategic Air Command. He passed away in 1976. I was a senior in high school. He was 27. Had a very unique health problem, an underdeveloped heart that was determined via autopsy. My parents insisted on conducting an autopsy. He drove himself to the hospital one crystal clear spring day, March 1976, and never recovered from that. But I miss him. He would be 78 years old today, his birthday, December 17th. I'm looking, by the way, at his official discharge papers from his career, his service in the U.S. Air Force. And, you know, Rhino, back in those days, we had the draft. So if you got drafted, there was a higher probability you'd be drafted into the infantry and perhaps in combat on the ground. So my brother, he volunteered and wanted to be in the Air Force, wanted to be part of that. And the Strategic Air Command is kind of like the Green Berets in that you have to test to qualify, and he did after his basic training and applied for that and moved his way up. But and would carry on a lot of these covert missions as they did back then, and sometimes that would take him. He shared with my parents behind enemy lines, but also while in the Air Force, they trained him in martial arts for self-defense, literally for self-defense, and earned a black belt. And somewhere at home, I've got a picture of him like winning the karate championship within the flight, of course, in the Air Force. And the photo was taken as he's got somebody, he's standing and he's got his arms up and got somebody that he's grabbed onto. They're above his head as he's flipping them, to sort of win the championship. Don't mind telling you, my brother was a badass. But he was as kind a person as you'd ever meet. But he loved his country, he loved his family, and I miss him. But I just want to share that. I hope I didn't get too personal there, but this would be the date of his birth, December 17th, 1948. Jerry in Waynesboro says, well, Obamacare survives for a new year vote thanks to 4 Republicans that jumped ship. So, yeah, let's clarify what Jerry's talking about. This just happened in the last couple of hours. 4 Republicans did join with Democrats, sort of rebelling against the speaker. And it's not that Obamacare survives. It's the extension of the expanded ACA enhanced subsidies we've talked extensively about that are expiring at the end of this year, just in a couple of weeks here. And then it's a discharge petition. It's included in the rules where if you can get enough votes to say, hey, look, we want you to put this on the floor to vote on, and it's political because they know it won't pass. I don't think it'll pass. I could be wrong, but it won't pass. But it gets, it gets your vote on the record. Hey, look, they voted against extending the enhanced subsidies. Representatives Brian Fitzpatrick, Rod Brejnahan Jr., Ryan McKenzie, they're all from the Keystone State of Pennsylvania. And then this one a bit surprising, Mike Lawler of New York. Now, all these guys are in squishy districts, as you know, that could go either way. They're trying to save their political hides to stay in office, and so they essentially join with the Democrats. And this clinches this discharge petition that was pushed by Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. And this would require the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, to put it up to a floor vote. Is the way that works. That's the procedure in our U.S. House and Senate as well. So not until January, after the subsidies have expired. What a mess this is. It just is. But we are out of here today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the program. We had a couple of good guests, a lot of good talk, a lot of great texts from our fantastic audience. Back again with you tomorrow in the Element Wealth Studio. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.